Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here at 3TR, here to give you another episode of the People's Questions, where I answer all the questions that you guys have sent me over the past week. We got a much shorter episode this time around. I don't recall seeing any newbies. I think everyone's a regular with some pretty standard questions that I think I can handle pretty easily. So, starting over full simple, for the first question coming from the Immortal Super Being, and you want to know, do I think that putting the Shadow Moses facility in Death Stranding to explore as an Easter egg or part of a mission would be fun? Actually, no, I wouldn't. In terms of the ideas of visiting Shadow Moses, I think Kojima handled that pretty well in Metal Gear Solid 4. We got to actually go back to the facility. I thought that was an amazing Easter egg, and it was more than an Easter egg. It actually had very strong story significance, so I think that's even better than any Easter egg. And I think that there's no need for him to venture back into Metal Gear. And even if he wanted to, he doesn't have permission. Konami owns the rights, and so he can't even throw hints at it if he wanted to. And I don't want him to. I've wanted him to move on from Metal Gear for some time, and this is his chance. And so he's looking forward and not looking back. So, no, I would not like him to introduce Shadow Moses or have any Metal Gear references. Next question comes from Santiago Scarpino. You want to know, is there any movie that I would agree I would agree with the general public that it is a bad movie, but I don't think it is as bad as everyone says it is? Sure. A movie that comes to mind is Alien vs. Predator. I openly acknowledge that it's not a great film, or even a good film in general, but I think that though the movie could have been better, I still find some enjoyment in watching it. It's definitely many steps ahead of the sequel, Alien vs. Predator Requiem, but yeah, I had fun with it, and I did see that movie in theaters, so yeah, that's the movie I would pick. Next question comes from All-Star Gamerpunk. You want to know, what was the defining moment in my lifetime of gaming that made me know that I was a PlayStation guy? The defining moment. I think it was within either the first or second month of college when I picked up my very first PlayStation 3, which was the very first console I ever bought on my own. And the reason that moment stands out to me is because while I was in college, I had a chance to actually, for the first time, play the Xbox 360. And I was never an Xbox guy. I had tried out the Xbox when it came out, and the only game I ever played on that game was Halo and Halo 2. And because, you know, it's no secret that Halo and the Microsoft's greatest weakness, at least to me, is it has a very, very lacking first-party support. It's, without question, probably one of the weakest lineups we've ever seen. I mean, it only comes down to maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 games maximum. Even Nintendo has a stronger lineup. PlayStation has always had a better lineup. And so when I got a chance to play the 360, the game I played on there was, of course, Halo 3, which I knew was going to be the best game that system would spit out. And then once I got my PlayStation 3 and I started playing games like Metal Gear Solid 4, Uncharted, Resistance, I knew there was no way that PlayStation was going to falter from that point on. And then when I looked back at the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 3, I realized this has been the norm for PlayStation. And moving forward, even the PlayStation 4, that has continued. Hell, even going into the portable systems, the PSP, the PlayStation Vita, even though the PlayStation Vita and the portable systems haven't been as much successful, they still carry that tradition of giving you, good games that you can only experience on PlayStation. And that's something that has been very, very true since I became a fan. I mean, I was a fan of PlayStation back in '97, but I wasn't like a strictly PlayStation person. I was still playing my Nintendo 64, and then I moved on to playing GameCube and other consoles. But after that moment, I was like, okay, moving forward, I think I've outgrown Nintendo, and Xbox is just never even going to appeal to me. Despite the fact that even when the Xbox One came out, I bought one, and I'm telling you, I had it for 6 months, and I literally turned it on less than 10 times, and I was thinking, this was a waste, and I simply traded it in to get my third PlayStation 4. So that was the definitive moment where I knew I was going to be a PlayStation guy, and heck, it's pretty much worked out for me pretty well for like the past 10 years, so I'm not complaining. Next question comes from Brady Burke, and you want to know, if I were to incorporate Vincent into a matchup, who would I put him up against? I don't know, because the trick is you want to keep the match balanced, and there was an idea. I had plans to put Vincent up against Prompto because I don't like mixing weapons. And so if I were to use Vincent and he's mainly a gun person, then I need to put him against someone else who's also a gun person. And there aren't many characters like that. So I'm not really sure who I could put him up against. I mean, that's why when some people ask me, like, do I think that Vincent could take down Sephiroth? It's not a matter of if I think he could or not. It's simply a matter of I think it's just an incompatible matchup to begin with. I would never put someone who has a sword up against someone who uses a gun. It's just, it's not a good matchup for me. So, honestly, I don't know who I would put him up against, to be honest. Next question comes from VBlader1. You want to know, if I were to rank Ardyn as a villain, where would I put him? I wouldn't rank him at all because I think he's, without question, one of the most annoying villains I've ever encountered. This guy's plan makes no damn sense, and he has more than 20 opportunities to kill these characters, and he's just, I don't even know what he's doing anymore. And his backstory makes no goddamn sense to me, so I don't know where I would rank him, but he is, without question, one of the most annoying characters I've ever seen in a video game, without question. Next question comes from Silver Leonhardt 2099. You want to know, what are my thoughts on the whole SJW movement infecting many forms of media like Star Wars, MCU, and even Final Fantasy franchise? You know, I would like you to answer, where are you getting this notion that's infecting Final Fantasy? Because if you're talking about the whole Final Fantasy X-2 fiasco, I do not consider that an SJW moment at all. I actually thought that was pretty creative, that they kind of made like a Charlie's Angels kind of type of game, which I personally had fun with, and there's a number of good things about that game I really like. But in terms of these other properties, I'm not a fan of it. I think the first notion that I noticed something was wrong was after I got out of the film Maleficent, and I'm not sure if I did a review for that movie, but I could tell that that movie was nothing more but one big man-hating film. And I even told myself, if I had had a daughter at that time, I would have taken her out of the film halfway in and demand my money back. The last thing that I need is some movie telling my daughter that men are shit. I am not kidding. If anyone who has seen that film can see that every single guy is a generic asshole or a bad guy. Every single guy. Even the prince is projected as a bad guy. And this is coming from Disney? I mean, I thought this was horrifying. And then it infected into all these other franchises. And then it's like, at this point, I'm just trying to enjoy these franchises as long as I can. Because sooner or later, it's going to infect everything. It is already spreading through the best properties like a goddamn virus. And we might as well enjoy these franchises as they are now, because they are going to get considerably worse one day. So I guess the notion of nothing great lasts forever is very much true. Next question comes from Phantom Cities. You want to know, what moment in Metal Gear Solid series is the most emotional? The boss is death in Metal Gear Solid 3. I would say that's definitely, without question, the most emotional, especially when you find out why she did what she did. And you know, that if it makes someone like Big Boss cry, who's like the manliest man in the franchise, I think that worked out pretty well for me, especially at the time when I first played the game, and I believe I was about 13 or 14 when I played that game, so yeah, it worked out pretty well for me. Next question comes from Black Lady. You want to know, which child do I think Kratos loves more? Atreus or Calliope? Or do you think he loves them both equally? I think he loves them both equally. Yeah, I don't think he could love one child more than the other, because his daughter he was tricked into killing, and so he was very saddened about that, and so he could have used that experience to try to form a much better relationship, because he wasn't really around Calliope all that much because he was a Spartan warrior and he was always on the battlefield of battle so often. But with Atreus, I think it was simply more of a fact that maybe he didn't want much of a relationship because his wife was around, but when his wife died, he was kind of forced to that role, and I think it benefited both characters pretty well. So, yeah, I think he loved his children equally. Next question comes from Jake Albanet, and you want to know, You know that I am done with the Metal Gear matchups for good, but who would win between Samuel Rodriguez and Solidus Snake? Sam would probably win, without question. I do think he's just simply a much better swordsman. I think his armor is much more, not as limiting, but much more flexible, which grants him much more protection. And I think that his skillsman as a swordsman is far superior than that of Solidus. Even with all of his extra weapons, that's probably something that he could get around pretty well. So yeah, I'm going with Sam. And the last question of the episode comes from Albed Z. And he wants to know, what do I know about the G4 channel? And what were my thoughts on it? Well, in its heyday, it was a great gaming channel. It had tons of great shows like Attack of the Show, X-Plays, Arena, Cheats. They had the game show G4ia, which was one of the earlier gaming award shows long before the VGAs was around, if I remember correctly. So many great shows. It's just a shame it went down the gutter. I'm not sure if a show like that could benefit nowadays because of YouTube, but you know, I certainly go back and watch a lot of reviews and video and shows that played during that era. But yeah, I do remember it's I have very fond memories of watching it. I mean, heck, I think that was even the channel that first got me into watching Ninja Warrior, and I think that Ninja Warrior is much more interesting overseas than it is done here in America, but that's just my personal preference. But yeah, it's one of those channels that unless you got to see it in its heyday, you really can't appreciate what we lost. It was a really great channel. I think a lot of gamers liked it. It's just a shame that it didn't get the ratings that it needed, and over time it just got worse until the point where it was just no longer what we all loved it and needed it to be. So yeah, I certainly miss G4. And with that, those are the questions that were sent in to me. If any of you guys have any more questions you'd like me to answer in next week's episode, be sure to type it in the comments down below. But make sure you get them in to me before next Wednesday, roughly around noon, before I start filming the next episode. And like always, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.